What if Thanos met the true gods of chaos? In his universe, the snap was a silent act, a final gesture for cosmic balance. But in the Sea of Souls, in the Immaterium, that silence became a deafening scream, a scream that awakened the Ruinous Powers. In the Titans' absolute will, they saw not an enemy, but the ultimate champion. So they sent him an invitation. They offered him a throne. They offered him godhood. But they made one fatal miscalculation. Thanos kneels to no one.
Part 1. The Echo in the Immaterium. When the second side of the coin was erased, half of all life in the universe turned to dust. In that moment of absolute balance, sanctified by the power of the Infinity Stones, Thanos believed he had touched the most fundamental truth of creation. Life, unchecked by death, was a meaningless proliferation. Abundance was a cancer without the grace of scarcity. Peace was a phantom without the shadow of conflict. He had solved the missing variable in the universe's grand equation. Now, on the quiet soil of a distant, nameless world, he sat alone, a farmer king watching the sun set on a grateful universe. The Infinity Gauntlet on his left hand hummed softly. The 6 singularities of cosmic power held captive at his fingertips. But before he had noticed anything, something had noticed him. The snap was not a silent event that echoed only in the material universe. In the Immaterium, the Sea of Souls, the raw, roiling ocean of psychic energy known as the warp, it was a cataclysm. The instantaneous, simultaneous non-existence of trillions upon trillions of souls created a psychic void, a silent scream of such magnitude that it dwarfed the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. This psychic shockwave, this profound emptiness, ripped through the fabric of unreality and crashed against the thrones of the warp's oldest, hungriest, and most powerful denizens, the Ruinous Powers, the gods of chaos. Khorne, the blood god, lord of skulls, felt it first as an insult. His throne, built of the skulls of champions and conquerors, seemed to shudder. The river of souls that flowed with the blood of every being slain in anger momentarily slowed its current. He felt not the slaughter, but the absence of it. A clean, sterile, passionless culling. There was no rage, no desperation, no glorious final stand. It was an act of death on a scale he had never witnessed, yet it was devoid of the worship he demanded. But through the insult, a grudging respect grew. The will required to perform such an act, the sheer strength to command cosmic law, to unmake reality. Here was a warrior, a being whose martial philosophy was so absolute it could slay half of existence with a single gesture. Khorne leaned forward on his brazen throne, his molten eyes fixed on the sole imprint of the one responsible. A champion of such caliber could drown galaxies in blood for his glory. Nurgle, the Plague Father, the Lord of Decay, experienced the snap as a blissful sigh. While Khorne felt the lack of violence, Nurgle felt the overwhelming wave of acceptance. Trillions of lives, cut short before their prime, their cycles of ambition and struggle brought to a sudden, final end. It was entropy perfected. His garden, a realm of fecund rot and joyful pestilence, bloomed with a billion new strains of despair and resignation. He saw Thanos not as a killer, but as a philosopher of the inevitable, a being who understood that all things must end, that struggle is pointless, and that the only true peace is found in the final, quiet decay. Grandfather Nurgle chuckled, a wet, gurgling sound that shook the boughs of his weeping trees. He saw a kindred spirit, a bringer of his sacred gift on a scale that made his most virulent plagues seem like minor ailments. This Thanos understood the beauty of the cycle's end. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, the changer of ways, felt the snap as a symphony of pure, exquisite change. He, who thrived on plots, schemes, and the infinite tapestry of possibility, was utterly enthralled. The plan, the sheer, patient, labyrinthine ambition of it all, the quest for the stones, the manipulation of empires and heroes, the centuries of plotting culminating in a single, reality-altering moment. It was the ultimate expression of just as planned. The universe had been static, predictable in its endless expansion. Now, it was broken, remade, its destiny thrown into glorious, beautiful chaos. Tzeentch's crystalline staff hummed with power, the infinite futures visible within it shifting and swirling around the purple-skinned titan. He saw not a warrior or a philosopher, but a grand schemer, a peer, an agent of change, sir, so profound he had rewritten the fundamental rules of existence. What glorious new plots could they weave together? And Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, the Lord of Excess, perceived the snap not through its outcome, but through the soul of its architect. The obsession, the single-minded, all-consuming pursuit of a singular perfect goal. To strive for something so completely that you would sacrifice everything, worlds, allies, your own beloved daughter, for its perfect realization. That was the ultimate sensation. The moment of the snap, that perfect instant of fulfillment where absolute will met absolute power, was a wave of psychic ecstasy that washed over the Dark Prince's palace. It was a more potent sensation than any physical pleasure, more exquisite than any work of art. Slaanesh saw in Thanos the perfection of desire, the apotheosis of obsession. Here was a soul who understood that the journey and the climax were everything, and the consequences were merely the lingering afterglow. For the first time in millennia, the four great rivals felt a flicker of unity, not of alliance, but of shared, avaricious interest. This mortal, this Thanos of Titan, was too significant to ignore. He was a potential champion beyond any they had ever known, a tool of unimaginable power, a reflection of their own divine natures. And so they sent their call. On his quiet world, as Thanos watched the twin suns dip below the horizon, a whisper slithered into his mind. It was not a sound, but a presence, a harmony of four distinct voices, weaving together into an invitation. "Warrior King," growled a voice of brass and unending war. "Savior of the cycle," gurgled a voice of rot and loving decay. "Architect of the real," hissed a voice of shifting truths and endless possibility. "Master of the perfect moment," sang a voice of agonizing bliss and ultimate sensation. "We see you, son of Titan. We know your work. It is magnificent, but incomplete. Come to us. Come to the heart of all things. Your power is but a candle to our sun. Accept our patronage, and we shall grant you true balance, true purpose, true eternity. Come into the warp." Thanos' eyes, ancient and weary, narrowed. He felt the psychic intrusion, an alien texture against the fabric of his own indomitable mind. He had dealt with gods and cosmic entities before. He had stared down eternity itself. This felt different, more primal, more hungry. He stood up, the gauntlet on his hand gleaming in the twilight. He was no one's servant, but he was also no one's fool. An invitation from such beings was a challenge, a threat. They called his work incomplete, an unforgivable arrogance. Using the Mind Stone, he traced the psychic tendril back to its source. The gauntlet flared, and his consciousness brushed against a dimension of pure, screaming madness. He saw impossible colors, heard thoughts that were also sounds, and felt emotions that were physical forces. He saw the four presences, vast and terrible, enthroned in their domains of psychic filth. He did not recoil in horror. He analyzed. These were not gods of creation. They were parasites, feeding on the very chaos he sought to quell. Their balance was an eternity of extremes. Their purpose was selfish enslavement. He would go to them, not as a supplicant, not as a potential champion. He would go as a king entering the lands of upstart warlords. He would hear their offers and deliver his refusal to their faces. He would show them what true will looked like. Clenching his gauntlet-clad fist, Thanos focused the power of the Space Stone. He did not need a Gellar field or a navigator. He was his own anchor of reality. With a surge of blue energy that tore a screaming, kaleidoscopic wound in the sky above him, Thanos of Titan stepped intentionally and unafraid into the realm of chaos. Part 2. An Invitation to Damnation. The transition was not a journey. It was a violation. Reality did not bend. It shattered. Thanos found himself standing not on solid ground, but on a substrate of solidified emotion. The air was a thick miasma of whispered secrets and distant screams. Above, a vortex of impossible colors churned, a sky of pure psychic energy where the constellations were the staring eyes of long-dead gods. This was the Immaterium, the warp, and it immediately tried to unmake him. The very essence of the realm gnawed at his being. It whispered promises of power to his ambition, reminded him of Gamora's death to fuel his grief, and showed him visions of a universe undoing his work to stoke his fear. It was an assault on the soul, designed to crack open any mortal mind and pour its corrupting influence inside. It failed utterly. Thanos was an anchor of pure, unyielding will in a sea of madness. The Mind Stone on his gauntlet shone with a steady, golden light, forming a psychic bulwark around his consciousness that was as absolute as his philosophy. The Soul Stone glowed with a warm, orange luminescence, holding his spirit intact, refusing the warp's tendrils' purchase. He was a fortress of self, and the legions of lesser demons that swarmed around him were but waves crashing against granite cliffs. Demonettes of Slaanesh, all lithe limbs and seductive promises, danced around him, their claws seeking to find the slightest crack in his resolve. He ignored them. When one grew bold and lunged, he didn't even turn his head. A simple, contemptuous flex of his will, amplified by the Mind Stone, turned its song of temptation into a shriek of terror as its own mind was forced to gaze upon the cold, mathematical finality of Thanos' own soul. It dissolved into a puff of perfumed smoke. Plague-bearers of Nurgle, their bodies bloated with cosmic diseases, shuffled towards him, counting the blessings of decay they intended to bestow. The air around them shimmered with heat as the Power Stone, a blazing orb of violet, passively incinerated the ethereal viruses and bacteria before they could touch his skin. They were not a threat. They were a sanitation problem. Bloodletters of Khorne, forged from rage and armed with hell-forged blades, charged with guttural roars. Thanos met the first charge, not with a blast of energy, but with a simple, brutal backhand. The physical strength of a titan, augmented by the gauntlet's ambient power, was more than enough. The demon shattered like glass, its essence flung back into the roiling currents of the warp. He was a mountain, and they were but angry pebbles. He walked forward, his heavy boots leaving solid, stable footprints on the shifting ground of nightmare. He was not merely surviving in the warp. He was imposing his own small pocket of ordered reality upon it. He passed through landscapes that should have driven a mortal mad in an instant, forests of writhing limbs, rivers of weeping blood, mountains of chattering teeth. He observed it all with a cold, analytical detachment. This was not a realm of power, he mused, but a realm of addiction. Each god and its servants were bound to a singular, all-consuming concept, trapped in an endless cycle of feeding their divine craving. They were not masters of the universe. They were its ultimate slaves. His path, seemingly random, was being guided. He knew he was being led, herded towards an audience chamber fit for cosmic tyrants. As he crested a ridge of crystallized despair, he saw it, a colosseum of impossible scale, its walls built from the petrified forms of fallen heroes and forgotten gods. In the center of this arena stood a figure, waiting for him. It was larger than any being Thanos had encountered thus far. It stood 30 feet tall, its form a twisted mockery of something once noble. Bat-like wings, torn and leathery, were furled behind a body clad in baroque, corrupted power armor fused to its very flesh. It held a demonic axe that pulsed with dark light, and its face was a mask of aristocratic cruelty, twisted by eons of servitude and rage. A demon prince, once a mortal champion, now an immortal slave, granted immense power in exchange for his soul. "Thanos of Titan," the prince's voice boomed, a sound like grinding continents. It was a voice accustomed to command, now laced with the sycophantic reverence of a herald. "I am Argath the Unbroken, favored of the Four. They have seen your great work. They have felt your grand ambition. They offer you a throne at their side, not as a servant, but as a peer. Your culling of the universe was a magnificent overture. Now, they invite you to help compose the symphony." Thanos stopped, his gaze sweeping over the demon prince with utter contempt. He saw the story of this being in a flash. A proud mortal king or general who sought power, made a deal, and was now a glorified pet, his unbroken title a bitter joke. "I have no peers," Thanos stated, his voice calm and resonant, cutting through the warp's cacophony. "And I do not compose symphonies with parasites." The demon prince's face contorted in a snarl. The air crackled with palpable fury. "Insolent mortal! You stand in the heart of our domain. You were brought here to accept a gift, not to cast insults. You will show my masters the respect they are due." The prince unfurled its wings and raised its axe, the weapon screaming as it drank in the ambient rage of the Immaterium. Thanos simply raised his gauntlet. The blue gem, the space stone, began to shine. "I was not brought here," he corrected, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. "I came." There is a difference. With a flick of his wrist, the space between him and Argath folded. The 30-foot distance vanished. Thanos was now directly in front of the towering demon, his gauntleted fist level with the creature's chest. The demon prince's eyes widened in shock, its charge cut short by impossible physics. "Your masters wish an audience," Thanos said, his eyes glowing with borrowed cosmic power. "Then I shall grant them one. You are no longer required." He clenched his fist. The power stone flared in a blinding flash of purple. The resulting concussive blast, focused to a single point, didn't just strike the demon prince. It annihilated it. There was no scream, no explosion of gore. One moment, Argath the Unbroken existed. The next, there was nothing but a lingering echo of pride and the faint smell of ozone. The very essence of the demon, its soul stuff, was unmade by the raw power of a universal constant. Thanos lowered his hand, the gauntlet humming contentedly. He looked up at the phantom thrones that were beginning to coalesce in the sky above the Colosseum, vast and terrible. He had delivered his RSVP. Now, the main event could begin. Part 3. The Audience of Ruin. The Phantom Colosseum dissolved. The ground beneath Thanos' feet became a platform of obsidian suspended in a void where 4 separate realities bled into one another. Before him, the Ruinous Powers manifested, not in their true, incomprehensible forms, which would have shattered his sanity despite the gauntlet's protection, but as avatars, immense psychic constructs that conveyed the core of their being. To his right, a towering figure of brass and blood-red armor, sat upon a throne of skulls, a gargantuan blade resting against his shoulder. The air around him was searingly hot, filled with the promise of glorious, unending battle. This was Khorne's echo. To his left, a grotesquely swollen, jovial being slumped on a throne of rotting wood, surrounded by buzzing flies and noxious, sweet-smelling fumes. Its laughter was a wet, phlegmy rattle, yet its eyes held a strange, grandfatherly benevolence. This was Nurgle's presence. Behind Nurgle, a shimmering, ever-changing form of pure light and shadow writhed, 1,000 faces appearing and vanishing within it. It spoke in riddles that were also truths, its very existence a paradox that frayed the edges of logic. This was Tzeentch's will. And behind Khorne, a being of androgynous, impossible beauty, reclined on a velvet couch of living flesh, its gaze promising every pleasure, every sensation, perfected to a point of agonizing ecstasy. The air around it was thick with musk, and the faint music of 1,000,000 tortured souls singing in chorus. This was Slaanesh's desire. "You have courage, mortal," boomed the voice of Khorne's avatar, shaking the very platform. "To strike down a prince in our court is a fine offering of blood and skulls. Your sterile snap was an act of cold calculation, a means to an end. Join me, Thanos. Your balance is a lie. The only truth is strength, proven in combat. With my blessing, your strength will be infinite. We will not halve the universe. We will forge it in the crucible of war. Every star will become a funeral pyre, every world a glorious battlefield. Take my mark and command my legions. Your gauntlet kills, but it does not savor. I will teach you the joy of the slaughter." Before Thanos could answer, Nurgle's avatar gurgled, a sound of blissful decay. "Ah, but war is so tiresome, so full of struggle. And struggle is suffering. You seek to end suffering, do you not, little Titan? I offer the ultimate peace. Your balance is a fleeting state. Life will grow back, and with it, famine, ambition, and pain. My gift is eternal, the peace of entropy, the quiet joy of decay. Accept my embrace. Rest in my garden, where there is no pain, no want, only the gentle, inevitable cycle of rebirth into my loving fold. Be my champion of tranquility, and spread the glorious gospel of resignation to all." "Peace? War, such linear concepts," hissed the voice of Tzeentch, 1,000 whispers at once. "You, Thanos, are a being of intellect, of design. Your plan was a masterpiece of causality. But it was just one plan. I offer you the blueprints to all plans. I offer you knowledge of every possible future, every branching timeline. With my guidance, you will not just be a variable in the cosmic equation. You will become the equation itself. Why settle for halving reality when you can rewrite it? Why be a gardener when you can be the god who designs the seeds? Join me, and we shall unravel the threads of destiny and weave a new tapestry of our own choosing." Finally, Slaanesh's avatar spoke, its voice a silken caress that promised everything the soul desired. They offer you concepts, war, peace, knowledge. How dull. I offer you a feeling. You remember it, don't you, Titan? That perfect moment, the snap, the instant your lifelong obsession was fulfilled, the absolute, perfect sensation of ultimate victory. Was it not the most exquisite thing you have ever felt? I can give you that feeling, forever, amplified 1,000,000,000-fold. Every desire, every ambition, every obsession you have ever had or ever will have, fulfilled in an eternal ascending crescendo of bliss. All you must do is yield to it. Worship the sensation, and you shall become sensation itself. Perfection is not a state of balance. It is a peak of experience that never ends. The 4 offers hung in the void, each a pathway to a different kind of damnation, each a promise of godhood in exchange for his soul. They waited, confident in their temptations. They had seduced star gods and conquered entire species with these promises. What was one mortal, even one as powerful as Thanos, against such a lure? Thanos stood silent for a long moment, the 6 infinity stones on his gauntlet glowing softly like watchful eyes. He looked at each avatar in turn, his expression unreadable. Then, a low, rumbling sound began to emanate from his chest. It was a chuckle, a dry, mirthless, utterly contemptuous sound. "You offer me chains," he said, his voice resonating with the power of his own conviction, "and call them thrones." He pointed his gauntleted hand at Khorne. "You offer war without purpose, slaughter for its own sake. You are a mindless beast of rage, a slave to the very bloodshed you command. Your glory is the death rattle of a maddened universe." He turned his hand to Nurgle. "You offer peace that is stagnation, an end to suffering that is the end of all life, all ambition, all meaning. You are a cosmic disease, mistaking the stillness of the grave for the serenity of a garden. Your tranquility is rot." His gaze fell upon Tzeentch. "You offer knowledge without wisdom, a labyrinth of schemes where the plotting itself is the only goal. You are a madman juggling fate, forever changing things for the sake of change, without end or reason. Your destiny is chaos, not order." Finally, he looked at Slaanesh. "And you are the most pathetic of all. You offer sensation without substance, an endless pursuit of a fleeting high that robs the soul of all will, all discipline. You are an addict, and you seek only to create more addicts to validate your own meaningless existence. Your perfection is a prison of the self." He lowered his hand, his eyes blazing with the cold fire of absolute certainty. The gauntlet's gems flared brighter. "I am here to bring balance to a universe consumed by unchecked life. You are the ultimate expression of that unchecked, cancerous growth. You are not gods. You are parasites, feeding on the pain, the ambition, the rage, and the despair of mortals. You do not offer salvation. You offer deeper, more eternal cages." He clenched his fist, the crackle of cosmic energy drowning out the stunned silence of the 4. My mission requires no gods, especially not parasites like you." For a heartbeat, the realm of chaos was utterly still, and then it erupted in a unified, multiversal scream of pure, incandescent rage. Part 4. The Fury of the Immaterium. The rage of the Chaos Gods was not a sound. It was a physical force that warped the very fabric of their dimension. The platform beneath Thanos shattered, and the 4 separate realities crashed together in a tidal wave of pure insanity. The sky of screaming eyes wept tears of molten rage. The ground became a churning sea of demonic flesh. The pact of the audience was broken. The invitation was rescinded. Now, there was only punishment. "Kill him!" bellowed Khorne, and 1 billion demons answered the call. A tide of red and brass, a legion of bloodletters led by colossal winged bloodthirsters, charged through the psychic mire. Their axes thirsted for the Titan's soul, their roars a paean to unending slaughter. Thanos met the tide head-on. He raised the gauntlet, the violet power stone blazing like a dying star. He didn't unleash a beam or a blast, but a wave of pure, kinetic force. The first rank of 100,000 demons didn't even have time to register their own destruction. They were simply erased from existence, their ichor and essence atomized. A bloodthirster, a greater demon of Khorne, descended from the sky like a meteor of hate, its whip of fire lashing out. Thanos activated the space stone. The whip cracked. 3 miles to his left, the space around the Titan having bent into an impossible curve. As the beast roared in frustration, Thanos used the same stone to fold the space behind it, creating a portal that opened directly in its path. The bloodthirster, charging forward, plunged into the portal and emerged from a second one directly above, now plummeting towards its own charging brethren below. "Give in to despair," gurgled Nurgle, and from the fleshy ground erupted rivers of pus and filth. Great unclean ones, mountains of diseased flesh waving rusted blades and ringing cracked bells, lumbered forward. Clouds of soul-devouring plagues billowed towards him. Thanos held up the gauntlet, and the time stone glowed with an emerald light. He didn't reverse time for the whole realm, an act that would be suicidal. Instead, he created a bubble of accelerated time around himself. The plagues of Nurgle, which took moments to infect and corrupt, aged 1 billion years in the nanosecond it took to cross the threshold of his aura, turning to harmless, inert dust. He strode through the pestilence untouched, a figure of clean purpose in a world of filth. A great unclean one swung its massive corroded blade. Thanos caught the blade not with his fist, but with an open palm. The reality stone flared crimson. The warp-forged metal, imbued with eons of decay, transformed. It became a cascade of beautiful, but utterly harmless, monarch butterflies that fluttered away into the madness. The greater demon stared in stupid shock before Thanos, with a precise blast from the Power Stone, cored a hole straight through its chest. "You cannot escape your fate!" shrieked Tzeentch, and the battlefield itself became a weapon. The ground shifted into a labyrinth of mirrors, showing futures where Thanos failed. Demonic entities of pure magic, the Lords of Change, swooped down, unleashing bolts of pure transmutation. One bolt struck Thanos' shoulder. For an instant, his flesh began to bubble and shift, turning to glass. But the reality stone pulsed again, asserting his reality over the warps. The glass solidified back into Titan flesh. A Lord of Change, a master strategist, tried to outwit him, teleporting around the battlefield, casting illusions, and altering causality to make Thanos' own blows miss. Thanos closed his eyes. He didn't need to see. The Mind Stone lit up, a beacon of pure thought. He reached out not physically, but psychically, and seized the greater demon's consciousness. He didn't try to crush it. That would be a long, arduous battle. Instead, he simply fed it a single, simple, unsolvable logical paradox. The mind of the Lord of Change, a being that thrived on complexity and possibility, locked itself into an infinite, recursive loop, trying to solve the unsolvable. It froze mid-air, its feathers of light flickering, before collapsing in on itself in a slulant implosion of pure thought. "Feel the perfection of agony!" Slaanesh screamed, and the very air became a weapon of sensation. Waves of pure pain and pleasure washed over Thanos, designed to overload his senses and leave him a gibbering wreck. Legions of demonettes, led by sinuous, multi-armed keepers of secrets, danced towards him, their claws promising an eternity of blissful torment. This was the most insidious attack, aimed not at his body or mind, but at his soul, and it was here that the Soul Stone proved its ultimate worth. The orange gem flared, creating an impenetrable sanctuary for his spirit. The waves of agony and ecstasy broke against it, unable to gain purchase. He felt them, but they were distant, like a storm raging outside a fortified bunker. A keeper of secrets lunged, its claws inches from his face. Thanos met its charge, his gauntleted fist closing around the demon's throat. The Soul Stone blazed. The other demons he had destroyed with power, reality, or space. Their essence would eventually reform in the warp. But the Keeper of Secrets let out a true shriek of final, absolute terror. The Soul Stone did not banish. It consumed. Thanos tore the very soul stuff of the greater demon from the warp and devoured it, erasing its existence permanently. The other demons, for the first time, felt a flicker of something beyond their god's imperative. They felt fear. Thanos fought on. He smashed demon engines with his bare, stone-augmented hands. He used the Time Stone to trap charging juggernauts in temporal stasis. He used the Mind Stone to turn entire formations of demons against each other in a frenzy of confusion. He was a one-man army, an avatar of order cutting a swathe through the heart of chaos. The gauntlet wasn't just a weapon, it was a declaration. A statement that the fundamental laws of his universe still held sway here, because he willed them to. He was bleeding, not blood, but raw energy. The gauntlet was smoking, the effort of imposing order on this realm immense. But he was winning. He was not just fighting through the warp. He was beating it into submission. And through the maelstrom of battle, he saw it. A flicker. A seam. A place where the veil between this madhouse and his reality was thin. That was his exit, carving a path through the last desperate wave of demons. He marched towards it, his will an unquenchable fire. Part 5. The Mark of the Anathema. Thanos reached the seam in reality. It was not a door or a portal, but a place where the Immaterium's fabric was frayed, a weak point shimmering with the faint light of a distant, real space star. The remaining demonic hordes, sensing his intent, threw themselves at him in a final, suicidal wave, driven by the furious commands of their humiliated gods. He had no time for them. Planting his feet firmly on the shifting ground, he raised the Infinity Gauntlet. All 6 stones flared at once, a rainbow of absolute power that pushed back the demonic tide and silenced the screams of the warp in his immediate vicinity. This was his most dangerous gambit. To use all 6 stones at once here, in a realm of pure energy, could unravel him, or the gauntlet itself. He ignored the risk. The mission was all that mattered. He focused his entire, indomitable will into a single point. Be open, he commanded, not with his voice, but with his soul. He wasn't asking. He was ordering reality itself. The Power Stone provided the raw force. The Space-Scorn base stone targeted the specific coordinates of his garden world. The Reality Stone forced the warp to obey the laws of physics, if only for an instant. The Time Stone ensured the opening would be stable long enough for his passage. The Mind Stone held his focus against the psychic hurricane of the 4 gods' rage, and the Soul Stone shielded his essence from being torn apart in the transit. With a sound like tearing reality, a perfect circle of blackness, dotted with the familiar stars of his own universe, tore open in front of him. It was a window home. Without a moment's hesitation, without a backward glance at the realm of parasites he was leaving behind, Thanos stepped through. The moment he was clear, the portal snapped shut with the force of a collapsing star, the backlash of which annihilated the thousands of demons closest to it. Thanos fell to one knee on the rich, dark soil of his farm. The gauntlet was smoking, the metal glowing cherry red. The stones within were dim, their light flickering as they recovered from the immense strain. His body ached, not with physical wounds, but with a deep, spiritual exhaustion. He had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had tried to devour him. He stayed there for a long time, the quiet chirping of alien insects and the gentle rustle of leaves the only sounds. He breathed in the clean air, stable, ordered, sane. In the Immaterium, the rage of the Chaos gods reached a level unseen since the Horus heresy. They had been defied. They had been insulted. They had been beaten, not by an army, not by a rival god, but by a single mortal. A mortal who had entered their domain, faced them down, refused their ultimate gifts, and carved his own way out through the sheer force of his will. He had not just survived them. he had judged them and found them wanting. Worse, he had shown them a new kind of threat. His Infinity Gauntlet, which they had initially seen as a powerful but crude tool, was something far more terrifying. In his hands, it was a weapon of order, a device that could impose the rigid laws of reality upon their fluid domain. The Soul Stone, in particular, horrified them. It did not merely banish their servants, it could permanently destroy them, erasing their very essence. It could starve them. For the first time in eons, the four were united in a singular, cold dread. This Titan was not just another enemy like the corpse emperor of mankind. The Emperor was a light in the darkness, a bastion against them. He was a passive, defensive threat. Thanos was different. He was active. He was an aggressor. He was, in his own way, a puritanical force of absolute order. To the gods of chaos, pure, unyielding order was the only true poison, the only true death. They marked him. In their rage and fear, they gave him a new title. He was not a champion, not a conqueror. He was Anathema. The Anathema, the great enemy. Back on his garden world, Thanos finally rose to his feet. He looked down at the gauntlet, the stones slowly regaining their brilliant luster. The battle had taken a toll, but it had also given him something: clarity. His work was not done. He had seen it now. The universe was not just threatened by the imbalance of life and resources. It was threatened by a deeper, more fundamental cancer, a spiritual corruption that fed on the very suffering he sought to end. These gods and their realm of chaos were the ultimate source of disorder. Their existence perpetuated the eternal cycle of war, disease, intrigue, and excess that made his balance necessary in the first place. To simply halve the universe was to only treat the symptom. He now saw the disease. He looked out at the peaceful sunset, his resolve, which he had thought absolute, hardening into something even more unyielding. Adamantium forged from diamond. His mission had a new, final stage. First, he would rest. He would allow the universe to heal, to find its equilibrium. He would watch the sun rise on his grateful, balanced creation. But after that, after his primary work was secured, he had a new target list. The Chaos Gods had marked him as their greatest enemy. Thanos, in turn, looked up at the sky, as if he could see through the veil of reality to the screaming madhouse beyond. He marked them as his next universal imbalance to be corrected. The war for the soul of reality had just begun.